let's talk about needles. Needles are super important for great sewing. There are a variety of needles out there, but really you only need a couple of different ones. If you're doing standard sewing, more than likely only want to use a universal needle. And universal needles come in 3 different sizes. We have 70-10, 80-12, which is the size that most people are comfortable with, and a 90-14. And universal means you can use it on cotton, denim, a variety of fabrics. It's basically used for everything except embroidery and metallic. You'll look at the eye of the needle on a universal needle. It's slightly smaller than if I look at the eye on an embroidery needle, because an embroidery needle is going much, much faster, so you need a bigger hole. If you're using metallic, it has a big eye in there because the metallic needs lots of room in order to go up and down so it doesn't fray. Now the sizes, obviously a 70-10 needle is going to have a very small eye, 80-20 is going to be slightly larger, and a 90-14 is even going to be larger. I change my needle at the start of every project. Needles are the one things that I probably buy in the hundreds, and I will go through maybe 2 or 3 needles. I can actually hear a dull needle because you'll hear your machine going thud, thud, thud. And my students have donated their used needles to me. Here's an interesting needle that has bent. Obviously you don't want to use that. What you don't want is to do any damage to down here, because it's going to cost an awful lot of money to get fixed, because this is where your needle's going to hit. If your needle is bent, immediately get rid of it and replace it with a new needle. You also do not want to use a titanium needle. Kind of the big thing now, titanium will last a lot longer, but the problem is that when they go down in here, they don't break. All needles are designed to break. That way it doesn't do any damage to the mechanics underneath here. With the titanium, it'll actually curve like a fish hook and it'll do significant damage to it. Needles are not expensive. That's why I buy them in the hundreds. If your needle breaks, like this one, needles are intended to break, you just replace it. Here's another one that is broken right here. That almost looks like a titanium needle that is hooked. You can imagine the amount of damage that's going to do to your machine. I strongly recommend you just go to the drugstore, get a sharps container. I keep it right by my machine. Some of us who have 10 sewing machines, I have 10 containers. Just pop it in, off you go. For the sewing that we do with this machine, we're typically just going to use a universal needle. Unless you're using decorative threads or whatnot, we'll talk about that in level 2 sewing. I recommend a brand name. Schmidt or Oregon are wonderful needles. You can't go wrong. Please just try to stay away from the titanium. Okay, so let's talk about changing your needle. So when we change our needle, we have our needle bar here. You're just going to loosen it. Needle will come out. And when you look at the needle, so your needle will have a flat side to it and a round side. And the flat side goes towards the back of the machine and the round faces you. Always change when you're starting a new project or you're having any tension problems. Put your needle in. You're going to insert it in. Now, this might be a good time to remove your foot. Just hit the black bar. Slide it up, and it'll only slide in one way. And I tend to use my fingernail, which is so that it's up all the way, and then you just tighten your needle bar. Make sure it's all the way up and it's tight. There your needle is in.